5-year-old Izabella Loving was found unresponsive in her home on April 3rd by deputies with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Paramedics did what they could to try to revive her, but unfortunately she died on scene.
Rage. Complete, utter rage.
Welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is about a 5-year-old little girl who died in her own home after being sick for over a week. And the entire time, her parents never sought any medical attention for her because they were hiding some very dark secrets. This is the story of Izabella Loving. Izabella Loving was born in Cold Springs, Nevada on July 5, 2019, to her parents, Nicholas and Andrea Loving. She was a happy and sweet little girl who loved the color pink, dancing, painting in the bathtub, and coloring. Isabella also had 2 older sisters, an older brother, and a younger brother. Isabella's mother, Andrea, had a son from a previous relationship, and she began dating Nicholas around the time the boy was 2. The pair later got married and went on to have 3 girls together, including Isabella, before Andrea got pregnant with a little boy, their last child, and the son that Nicholas had so badly been hoping for. The family lived together in their home, located on Crystal Canyon Boulevard in Cold Springs. And the children's parents, Nicholas and Andrea, owned their own business called Extreme Remodeling LLC. From an outsider's perspective, they had a relatively normal life. That's until you looked at their youngest daughter, Isabella. In viewing pictures of the little girl, you can tell that she was singled out by her parents. She's frequently covered in bruises, she's thin, and has her hair cut very short. You can also see the difference in her clothes, which look to be hand-me-downs, compared to the newer ones that her siblings wear. In many of these photos, little Isabella looks sad and left out. And while her 2 sisters slept on nice queen-size beds in the home, Isabella was forced to sleep instead on a crib-sized mattress on the floor. Though it doesn't seem like Isabella was always treated in this manner, because a former nanny to the children posted pictures online, and they show the little girl when she was just a baby. She looks happy, healthy, and well cared for. This woman, who'd previously looked after the Loving children, confirmed that Isabella at one point was treated just like her siblings.
I am Isabella.
But once the little girl's brother was born, Andrea began staying home with the kids, and the nanny services were no longer needed. It was around that time that it's believed things began to change for little Isabella. Now, Andrea had previously worked alongside her husband, running their home remodeling business, Extreme Remodeling LLC, though the name of that business had been changed quite a few times, which was likely due to the fact that the couple was said to be stealing from their customers. It's been alleged that Nicholas and Andrea had taken quite a few of their customers' deposits that they had given them to complete their home repairs. In many other clients' homes, the husband and wife either completely messed up the project and never returned to fix it, or they would just leave partway through the project being completed and then never return back to finish. So that gives you a better idea of what type of people Nicholas and Andrea really are. Around 6:50 a.m. on April 3rd, 2025, Isabella's father contacted emergency services, saying that his 5-year-old daughter, who had been sick the night before, now had no pulse and was cold to the touch. First responders rushed to the home on Crystal Canyon Boulevard, and in an upstairs bedroom, they found little Isabella, who was now non-responsive. She was lying next to a tiny toddler mattress that was on the floor. The little girl had visible injuries all over her entire body, including to her face, hips, pelvis, arms, and genitals. She also had oral trauma and at least 10 injuries to just her face. Unfortunately, there was nothing that first responders could do for her, and 5-year-old Izabella Loving was pronounced dead at the scene. Due to her injuries, paramedics were immediately suspicious of the circumstances surrounding the little girl's death, and so authorities were called to the home. When police took Isabella's parents' initial statements, Nicholas would tell them that his daughter had recently fallen out of his truck, and he had to grab her by the arms to save her from falling onto the pavement, but this had caused injuries to her arms. He also said that an accident in which Isabella had gotten hit in the face with a plastic baseball bat by another child the same day had resulted in a black eye. Then Nicholas informed police that Isabella had additionally fallen out of his truck a second time, less than a week prior. On that occasion, she had fallen to the pavement and she sustained a gash to her head. He didn't provide explanations for any of her other injuries. The father went on to describe Isabella as being very clumsy, saying that she fell down often, including downstairs several times. According to Nicholas, he and his wife had planned on taking her to a specialist in June to see why she was falling down so often. Then, both of the girl's parents would tell investigators that Isabella had been sick for about 9 to 10 days prior to her death, and during this time, she had been coughing up blood and mucus. And the night before she died, she'd been vomiting. They claimed that they had put her down for bed between 7 and 8 p.m., and then they'd been awoken in the middle of the night by one of the girl's siblings who said she was vomiting and they were worried about her. So the parents got out of bed and went to Isabella, but once they saw she was fine, they went back to bed. Nicholas had checked on his daughter one more time during the night, before they got up the next morning and realized she was unconscious. When authorities asked the mother and father why they had not brought their daughter to the hospital sooner if she had indeed been as sick as long as they claimed, the parents said that it was because they didn't want doctors seeing her injuries. And they also stated that they had been advised in the past not to seek medical attention for her until she'd been sick for at least 12 days, which makes absolutely no sense at all. The couple also expressed to officers that they were afraid that Child Protective Services would become involved with the family's lives again. Because come to find out, surprise, surprise, Child Protective Services had recently opened up a case against the parents. However, it was now closed. Soon after giving their initial statements to police, both Andrea and Nicholas were asked to come down to the Washoe County Sheriff's Department for further questioning. During his interview, Isabella's father denied ever spanking, hitting, shoving, or kicking his daughter, and said he had no explanation for her severe injuries because he worked a lot and wasn't home. When police questioned him about abrasions they noticed on his hands and fingers, he insisted they were just from his job. Then Nicholas went on to describe several incidents that had happened over the last several weeks that may explain Isabella's injuries. He stated that his daughter had fallen out of his Ford pickup truck about a week prior. Over time, however, the father began giving two different versions of this incident. In the first version, he described his daughter as falling down and hitting her face on the pavement. But in the other version, he claimed that Isabella had put her hands down to catch her fall, therefore not hitting her face. The father went on to tell detectives that on the night of April 2nd, the 5-year-old had complained about not feeling well and being cold. When he took her temperature, it was about 96 or 97 degrees. But he didn't feel the need to call a doctor. Instead, he just gave her a bath and put her to bed. Nicholas had gone to sleep himself around 9 or 10 p.m. Then he'd been awoken around 7 a.m. by someone in the house freaking out that Isabella wasn't breathing. But during the course of this interview, the father would end up admitting that he and Andrea had actually found their daughter not breathing around 2 a.m. They didn't call for help, though, instead waiting close to 5 hours before doing so. According to Nicholas, it was because during this time, he was busy consoling his very upset wife. He also admitted during his interview that they would keep Isabella in a 5x5 cubby in the girl's bedroom. He said that he had locked his daughter in there on one occasion as punishment, but it was mostly her mother who put her in there. When Andrea spoke with detectives, she told them that the little girl would get locked in the 5x5 cubby as punishment for things such as stealing candy from her parents' bedroom. She also informed them that 4 days prior to 911 being called on March 30th, she had witnessed her husband, Nicholas, kick Isabella in the crotch. Then she saw him drag her by the hood up the stairs. Following that, she heard Nicholas yelling at Isabella before there was a thud against the wall, like he had thrown the child. The mother noticed a large black eye forming on her daughter the next day. At the end of her interrogation, Andrea turned to detectives and said, "I should go to jail for not helping her, and Nick should go to jail for killing her." Now, police additionally wanted to speak with Isabella's older sisters, and they would tell them that they had been awoken around midnight and forced to go downstairs. They were told by their dad that their sister had died and they might be going on a long trip. At this point, detectives had enough evidence to charge and arrest 35-year-old Nicholas Loving with 1 count of CA causing substantial bodily harm. He was held on a $10 million cash-only bond. And even though Andrea had told police that she should go to jail for not helping her daughter, which is 100% correct, she has not yet been arrested. Following Nicholas's arrest, his story about why they had not contacted emergency services for nearly 5 hours would change. While this was previously blamed on him consoling his upset wife, he was now saying that it was Andrea's fault that the call had not been placed sooner because she wanted to run. Andrea, on the other hand, claimed that Nicholas would not let her place the phone call because he wanted to bury Isabella's body in the backyard, then run to his parents' home in Virginia. She had apparently told her husband that they could not do this, though, because the little girl's body would rot. Whichever version of events is true, it appears that the parents ultimately decided to remove Isabella from her 5x5 cubby where she normally slept, drag her and her mattress across the room, and then stage it like she had died there. They then went with the story of finding her unconscious at 7 o'clock in the morning. As of right now, Isabella's official cause of death is unknown, as the medical examiner has not yet completed her autopsy. And when they do, hopefully it means charges being brought against her mother as well. As I previously said, the ongoing mistreatment of this little girl is quite apparent looking at photos. There was at least one picture that was taken at Disneyland a couple weeks prior to the 5-year-old's death. And I cannot believe that they took her out in public like that. She looks so malnourished, injured, and not properly cared for. So there's been much speculation online that maybe little Isabella was being targeted because she was a product of her mother's affair. However, even though this sounds like it might be a reasonable explanation, it has not been confirmed. And many believe that the little girl looks just like her father. Shortly after Isabella's death on April 17th, Andrea moved out of the family's home, taking many items with her. Her other children had already been removed from her care. And it seems that the mother was fine with returning to the home where her little girl had just died, as well as living there for a few weeks too. Andrea's own mother, Diana Conger, has been letting her stay with her since then. And she has also posted online defending her too, saying that her daughter was a victim of DV at the hands of her husband, Nicholas. So she shouldn't be to blame for Isabella's death, which is horseshit. Diana has additionally tried saying that when she saw Isabella in January, just a few months prior to her death, she was healthy and fine. Since Isabella's passing, protests led by Ashley Viney, the aunt of Andrea Loving's oldest son, have been held, calling for justice for little Isabella, as well as for changes to the Child Protective Service system. Ashley, as well as others, had previously reported what was happening to the 5-year-old in her parents' home. But the family's case with Child Services had been closed out just a month prior to her death. The aunt, along with other protesters, want accountability from social workers who were involved with Isabella's case. They also want her mother, Andrea, to be arrested and charged.
With all the cases that were open, the kids were never removed. Unfortunately, she keeps a clean house, she keeps food in the house, and a lot of times that's just what they look at. They go in the front room, the kitchen, the bedrooms, it looks good, okay, we're gonna leave. But I don't see how anyone could just walk in and see a child malnourished, bruises all over her face and scabs all over her face, and say you guys are doing a great job.
Ashley Viney, who says she was close to the Loving family, says that in this case, there had been multiple reports filed for concern over the welfare of the children. Some she filed herself. And she says the system failed Isabella.
Us bystanders, us that are close to the family, and I was close to the Loving family, we've made reports after reports throughout the years, and they weren't taken seriously. And we can't go in and kidnap them, unfortunately, as much as I wish I could.
She says that a solution to this issue is that if there are multiple reports filed to CPS for incidents like these, to remove the children from the home at that time.
There's been a lot of incidents where children have been murdered by their parents due to the protection that they're not getting.
And Viney says that sometimes people feel like they won't be heard if they file reports, that no one will believe them. But she says, file the report anyway.
Keep reporting even if you feel like it's not going to do anything. Anything that's suspicious, report, and keep reporting if you have to. Hopefully the laws will get changed after this.
They're now also advocating for Isabella's law, which would mandate more random welfare checks in homes where there were previous cases of CA. Yes, I said previous cases, because apparently Nicholas Loving had been convicted of CA back in 2014 in regards to Andrea's oldest son. The couple had only been dating for several months at that point, when Nicholas had bit the toddler and broken his arm, after what he claimed had been forcefully removing him from the bathtub. Following this incident, Andrea was said to have begged the courts not to send him to jail. Then she went on to marry this monster and had 4 more children with him too. The judge at the time only gave Nicholas 5 years of probation because he had a full-time job and seemed remorseful. And after this, Nicholas and Andrea somehow went on to get 50% custody of Andrea's oldest son. Now, Ashley Viney has also said that there were numerous occasions where she was on the phone with Andrea and she heard her screaming at her children. She also knows that the mother often asked Nicholas to leave work early because she just could not handle the kids on her own. Ashley went on to state that Andrea's mother's claims that her daughter had been a victim of DV were bullshit. She had never seemed fearful of Nicholas, but rather always talked about a wonderful husband and father he was. Women whose children cheered with Isabella's older sisters said that the little girl was not allowed to play with other children. And they never saw them feeding her either. Instead, the mother and father would keep little Isabella secluded away from everyone. If anyone tried talking to her, they would quickly shut them down. It was even to the point where if Isabella was cold and someone offered her a blanket, the parents would refuse it. According to a school librarian, every time she had seen the Loving family, Isabella never got out of her stroller. While she said that she knew the family was a little odd, she always just thought that the little girl was ill. However, the librarian did make one report to Child Protective Services after seeing a bruise on Isabella's face. Another very telling thing about how the 5-year-old was treated in the home were some of her mother Andrea's social media posts. In posts that she made around Christmas time in relation to the Elf on the Shelf doll, you get some rather weird vibes. Many of the notes that she wrote for the girls from The Elf single out Isabella for misbehaving, or just forget to mention her altogether. In one letter, Andrea writes, "Everyone will be better if more respect is shown. Mommy and Daddy must also show more respect. Santa is not happy but is willing to give our house a second chance. Be careful though, because there will not be a third chance." The letter, in which Andrea cannot even spell her own child's name correctly, goes on to further state, "And tell your daddy if he ever touches me again, I'm going to get his belt and he will know how it feels." Another note from the elf says, "Wow, what a lot of sadness here in a joyful home. I was touched by your daddy. I was not hurt, but I am not sure what Santa will say or about mommy being upset." So it seems like the mother used the elf to threaten her children, rather than making it a fun game like it should be. Not to mention the wording that she uses in a lot of these letters just feels icky and off. Following her death, a memorial was made outside the home where 5-year-old Isabella had once lived. People left balloons, flowers, candles, and stuffed animals in her memory. Many residents throughout Cold Springs have also been tying pink ribbons around town. and on their vehicles in remembrance of Isabella, as well as to symbolize the fight to get her justice. On the night of April 11, 2025, a candlelight vigil was held for 5-year-old Izabella Loving. During this time, event coordinators asked people to keep their porch lights on for her. They also encouraged them to replace their bulbs with pink and purple lights, as those were her favorite colors.
Hundreds of community members gathering in Cold Springs on Friday, honoring a young life gone too soon.
This is totally off the wall. I mean, there's just no words to how people are feeling. It's awful.
It ripped my heart out of my chest because I just, number one, just thought about all the years of abuse and the fear she must have felt.
I know people had reached out and talked to CPS, and the case was shut down, and there's a lot of outrage about that.
It actually really upset me, and being a therapist, making many reports to CPS and nothing being done when this could have been prevented.
Ashley Viney knew Isabella Loving and says the 5-year-old was a ray of sunshine whose spirits seemed to darken.
Isabella was just a really beautiful, intelligent, and smiley girl from what she could enjoy.
In July of 2025, the Washoe County Medical Examiner's Office announced that they had completed their investigation into Isabella's death. It was determined that the 5-year-old had died as a result of bacterial pneumonia. Multiple blunt force injuries, malnutrition, dehydration, and medical neglect were all also significant conditions which contributed to her death.
Thank you. Thank you.
At this point, Isabella's mother, Andrea Loving, who had not previously been arrested, now was. She was charged with CA causing substantial bodily harm, and her bail was set at $2 million. Yet Andrea still hadn't been charged with murder. But don't worry, that came a few months later, in December of 2025. Now she's facing a charge of first-degree murder. Isabella's father, Nicholas's charges were also upgraded to murder. Investigators found text messages which showed that Andrea had contributed in Isabella's physical abuse, which lasted from December of 2022 to April of 2025. And it often included Andrea only feeding Isabella one piece of bread for her daily nutrition. Text messages showed that Andrea asked her husband Nicholas several times if she had permission to feed the child, but most of the time, the answer was no. Evidence also showed that Andrea had been searching for things on Google, such as kidney failure, dark blood from boil when popping, my 5-year-old is peeing blood, how long can you go without food, and signs my child is dying. Unbelievable. All of this instead of seeking medical attention for poor Isabella. Since Andrea's arrest, photos have been released online of the wooden 5x5 locked cubby where Isabella was forced to sleep, while her siblings got to sleep in a nice queen-size bed. Speaking of her siblings, Andrea is alleged to have told them to lie to both police and Child Protective Services, making them blame their other sibling for Isabella's injuries. When Andrea was asked why she had let Isabella's mistreatment go on for so long, she said that she had no explanation, other than the fact that she thought that Nicholas might hurt her too. She said she should have stopped it, but didn't. Andrea admitted to letting Nicholas kick the child in her private parts, her back, and legs while he had boots on. She additionally told police that she had tried to bring her daughter to see a doctor, but Nicholas told her that she couldn't do that. The little girl's last known visit to a pediatrician was in October of 2022. Andrea and Nicholas had also never enrolled Isabella in school, even though she was of age, likely because they wanted to hide the abuse. Andrea was said to have told her husband that Isabella was deserving of her mistreatment, and that she wanted him to be the one to deliver it. A neighbor of the family's named Lori said that she had seen Isabella in the months prior to her death, and she had been wearing a face mask. Andrea explained it as being due to a leukemia diagnosis, which was absolutely not true. After the 5-year-old died, Lori had the opportunity to walk through the Lovings' home. While inside, she noticed security cameras, doors that locked from the outside, and unsanitary conditions, particularly in the master bathroom. Lori also noted that Isabella had significantly fewer clothes than her siblings did. Andrea and Nicholas Loving's preliminary hearings are scheduled to take place on February 6th, 2026. In addition to the candlelight vigil that was previously held for Isabella, a memorial cruise was also held in her honor on Sunday, June 29th, 2025. About 50 bikers and 30 cars took to the streets near Cold Spring Park, and the procession made its way down US 395 to downtown Reno. Many wore pink for Isabella, as the organizers of the event said it's the color of love and remembrance.